They crossed the desert for another 2 days in silence. The alchemist had become much more cautious because they were approaching the area where the most violent battles were being waged. As they moved along, the boy tried to listen to his heart. It was not easy to do. In earlier times, his heart had always been ready to tell its story, but lately that wasn't true. There had been times when his heart spent hours telling of its sadness, and at other times it became so emotional over the desert sunrise that the boy had to hide his tears. His heart beat faster when it spoke to the boy of treasure, and more slowly when the boy stared entrance at the endless horizons of the desert. But his heart was never quiet, even when the boy and the alchemist had fallen into silence. Why do we have to listen to our hearts? The boy asked when they had made camp that day. Because wherever your heart is, that is where you will find your treasure. But my heart is agitated. It has its dreams, it gets emotional, and it becomes passionate over a woman of the desert. It asks things of me and it keeps me from sleeping many nights when I am thinking about her. Well, that's good. Your heart is alive. Keep listening to what it has to say. During the next 3 days, the travelers passed by a number of armed tribesmen and saw others on the horizon. The boy's heart began to speak of fear. It told him stories it had heard from the soul of the world, stories of men who sought to find their treasure and never succeeded. Sometimes it frightened the boy with the idea that he might not find his treasure or that he might die there in the desert. At other times, it told the boy that it was satisfied, it had found love and riches. My heart is a traitor. It doesn't want me to go on, the boy said. That makes sense, the alchemist answered. Naturally, it's afraid that in pursuing your dreams you might lose everything you have won. Well, then why should I listen to my heart? Because you will never again be able to keep it quiet, even if you pretend not to have heard what it tells you. It will always be there inside you, repeating to you and what you are thinking about life and about the world. You mean I should listen if even if it's treasonous? Treason is a blow that comes unexpectedly. If you know your heart well, it will never be able to do that to you because you will know its dreams and wishes and will know how to deal with them. You will never be able to escape from your heart, so it's better to listen what it has to say. That way you will never have to fear an unanticipated blow. The boy continued to listen to his heart as they crossed the desert. He came to understand its dodges and tricks and to accept it as it was. He lost his fear and forgot about his need to go back to the horses because one afternoon his heart told him that it was happy. Even though I complain sometimes, it's sad. It's because that I'm the heart of a person and people's hearts are that way. People are afraid to pursue their most important dreams because they feel that they don't deserve them or that they will be unable to achieve them. We, their hearts, become fearful just thinking of loved ones who go away forever or for moments that could have been good but weren't, or of treasures that might have been found but or forever hidden in the sands. Because when these things happen, we suffer terribly. My heart is afraid that it will have to suffer, the boy told the alchemist one night as they looked up to the moonless sky. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. Fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second of the search is a second encounter with God and with eternity. Every second of the search is an encounter with God, the boy told his heart. When I have been truly searching of my treasure, every day has been luminous because I have known that every hour was a part of the dream that I would find it. When I have been truly searching of my treasure, I discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not had the courage to try things that seemed impossible for a shepherd to achieve. So his heart was quiet for an entire afternoon. That night the boy slept deeply, and when he awoke, his heart began to tell him things that came from the soul of the world. It said that all people who are unhappy have God within them, and that happiness could be found in a grain of sand from the desert, as the alchemist had said, because a grain of sand is a moment of creation, and the universe has taken millions of years to create it. Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him, his heart said. We, people's hearts, seldom say much about those treasures because people no longer simply let life proceed in its own direction, toward its own fate. But unfortunately, very few people, the path led out of them, the path to their destinies, happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out indeed to be a threatening place. So we, their hearts, speak more and more softly. We never stop speaking out, but we begin to hope that our words won't be heard. We don't want people to suffer because they don't follow their hearts. Why don't people's hearts tell them to continue to follow their dreams? The boy asked the alchemist. Because that's what makes a heart suffer most, and heart doesn't like to suffer. From then on, the boy understood his heart. He asked it, please, never to stop speaking to him. He asked that when he wandered far from his dreams, his heart press him and sound the alarm. The boy swore that every time he heard the alarm, he would heed its message. That night, he told all of this to the alchemist, and the alchemist understood that the boy's heart had returned to the soul of the world. So, what should I do now? The boy asked. Continue in the direction of the pyramids and continue to pay heed to the omens. Your heart is still capable of showing you where the treasure is. Is that the one thing I still needed to know? No. What you still need to know is this: before a dream is realized, the soul of the world tests everything that was learned along the way. It does this not because it is evil, but so that we can, in addition to realizing our dreams, master the lessons we have learned as we have moved toward the dream. That's the point at which most people give up. It's the point at which, as we say in the language of the desert, one dies of thirst just when the palm trees have appeared on the horizon. Every search begins with beginner's luck, and every search ends with the victors being severely tested. The boy remembered an old proverb from his country. It said that the darkest hour of the night came just before the dawn. On the following day, the first clear sign of danger appeared. Three armed tribesmen approached and asked what the boy and the alchemist were doing there. I am hunting with my falcon, the alchemist answered. We are going to have to search you to see whether you are armed. One of the tribesmen said. The alchemist dismounted slowly, and the boy did the same. Why are you carrying money? Asked the tribesman, when he had searched the boy's bag. I need it to get to the pyramids, he said. The tribesman who was searching the alchemist's belongings found a small crystal flask filled with a liquid and a yellow glass egg that was slightly larger than a chicken's egg. What are these things? He asked. That's the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. Is the masterwork of the alchemist. Whoever swallows that elixir will never be sick again, and a fragment from the stone turns my metal, any metal, into gold. The Arab laughed at him, and the alchemist laughed along. They thought his answer was amusing, and they allowed the boy and the alchemist to proceed with all of their belongings. Are you crazy? The boy asked to the alchemist when they had moved on. What did you do that for? To show you one of the life's simple lessons, the alchemist answered. When you possess great treasure within you and try to tell others of them, seldom are you believed. They continued across the desert. With every day that passed, the boy's heart became more and more silent. It no longer wanted to know about things of the past or future. It was content simply to contemplate the desert and to drink with the boy from the soul of the world. The boy and his heart had become friends, and neither was capable now for betraying the other. When his heart spoke to him, it was to provide a stimulus to the boy and to give him strength, because the days of silence there in the desert were wearisome. His heart told the boy what his strongest quality were: his courage in having give up his sheep and in trying to live out his destiny, and his enthusiasm during the time he had worked at the crystal shop. And his heart told him something else that the boy had never noticed. It told the boy of dangers that had threatened him but that he had never perceived. His heart said that one time it had hidden the rifle of the boy had taken from his father because of the possibility that the boy might would wound himself. And it reminded the boy of the day when he had been ill and vomiting out in the fields, after which he had fallen into a deep sleep. There had been two thieves farther ahead who were planning to steal the boy's sheep and murder him, but since the boy hadn't passed by, they had decided to move on, thinking that he had changed his route. Does a man's heart always help him? The boy asked the alchemist. Mostly just the hearts of those who are trying to realize their destinies, but they do help children, drunks, and the elderly too. Does the man does that mean that I'll never run into danger? It means only that the heart doesn't what does what it can, the alchemist said. One afternoon they passed by the encampment of one of the tribes. At each corner of the camp were Arabs garbed in beautiful white robes with arms at the ready. The men were smoking their hookahs and trading stories from the battlefield. No one paid any attention to the two travelers. There is no danger, the boy said when they had moved on past the encampment. The alchemist sounded angry. Trust in your heart, but never forget that you are in the desert. When men are at war with one another, the soul of the world can hear the scream of battle. No one fails to suffer the consequences of everything under the sun. All things are one, the boy thought. And then, as if the heart wanted to demonstrate that the alchemist was right, two horsemen appeared from behind the travelers. You can't go any further, one of them said. You are in the area where the tribes are at war. I'm not going very far. Looking straight into the eyes of the horseman, they were silent for a moment and then agreed that the boy and the alchemist could move along. The boy watched the exchange with fascination. You dominated those horsemen with the way you looked at them. Your eyes show the strength of your soul. That's true, the boy thought. He had noticed that in the midst of the multitude of armed men back at the encampment, there had been one who stared fixedly at the two. He had been so far away that his face wasn't even visible, but the boy was certain that he had been looking at them. Finally, when they had crossed the mountain range that extended along the entire horizon, the alchemist said that they were only 2 days from the pyramids. If we are going to go our separate ways soon, the boy said, then teach me about alchemy. You already know about alchemy. It's about penetrating to the soul of the world and discovering the treasure that has been reserved for you. No, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about transforming lead into gold. The alchemist fell as silent as the desert and answered the boy only after he stopped to eat. Everything in the universe evolved, and for wise men, gold is the metal that evolved the furthest. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. I just know that tradition is always right. Men have never understood the words of the wise, so gold, instead of being seen as a symbol of evolution, become the basis of conflict. There are many languages spoken by things. There was a time when, for me, a camel's whinnying was nothing more than weaving. Then it became a signal of danger, and finally it became just a whinny again. But then he stopped. The alchemist probably already knew all that. I've known the true alchemist, the alchemist continued. They locked themselves in their laboratories and tried to evolve so gold had, and they found the philosopher's stone because they understood when something evolves, everything around that thing evolves as well. Others stumbled upon the stone by accident. They already had the gift, and their soul was readier for such things that the soul of others. But they don't count; they're quite rare. And then there were the others who were interested only in gold. They never found the secret. They forget the lead, copper, and iron have their own destinies to fulfill. And anyone who interferes with the destiny of another thing never will discover his own. The alchemist's word echoed out like a curse. He reached over and picked up a shell from the ground. This desert was once a sea, he said. I noticed that, he answered. The alchemist told the boy to place the shell over the ear. He had done that many times when he was a child and had heard the sound of the sea. The sea has lived on in this shell because that's its destiny, and it will never cease doing so until the desert is once again covered by water. They mounted their horses and rode out in the direction of the pyramids of Egypt. The sun was setting when the boy's heart sounded a danger signal. They were surrounded by gigantic dunes, and the boy looked at the alchemist to see whether he had sensed anything. But he appeared to be unaware of any danger. 5 minutes later, the boy saw two horsemen waiting ahead of them. Before he could say anything to the alchemist, the two horsemen and had become 10 and then 100, and they were everywhere in the dunes. They were tribesmen dressed in blue and black rings surrounded their turbans. Their faces were hidden behind blue veils, with only their eyes showing. Even from a distance, their eyes conveyed the strength of their souls, and their eyes spoke of death. The two were taken to a nearby military camp. A soldier shoved the boy and the alchemist into a tent where the chief was holding a meeting with his staff. "These are the spies," said one of the men. "We are just travelers," the alchemist answered. "You were seen at the enemy camp 3 days ago, and you were talking with one of the troops there." "I'm just a man who wanders the desert and knows the stars," said the alchemist. "I have no information about the troops or about the movement of the tribes. I was simply acting as a guide of my friend here." "Who is your friend?" the chief asked. An alchemist said he understands the force of nature and he wants to show you his extraordinary powers. The boy listened quietly and fearfully. "What is a foreigner doing here?" asked another man. "He has brought money to give to your tribe," said the alchemist. The alchemist gave the gold coins to the chief. The Arab accepted them without a word. There was enough there to buy a lot of weapons. "What is an alchemist?" he asked. "It's a man who understands nature and the world. If he wanted to, he could destroy this camp just with the force of the wind." The men laughed. They were used to the ravages of war and knew that wind could not deliver them a fatal blow, yet each felt his heart beat a bit faster. They were men of the desert and they were fearful of sorcerers. "I want to see him to do it. He needs 3 days. He's going to transform himself into the wind just to demonstrate his power. If he can't do so, we humbly offer you our lives for the honor of your tribe." "You can't offer me something that is already mine," the chief said arrogantly. But he granted the travelers 3 days. The boy was shaking with fear, but the alchemist helped him out of the tent. "Don't let them see that you are afraid. They are brave men and they despise cowards." But the boy couldn't even speak. He was able to do so only after they had walked through the center of the camp. There was no need to imprison them. The Arabs simply confiscated their horses, so once again the world had demonstrated many languages. "You gave them everything I had, everything I have saved in my entire life. Well, what good would it be to you if you had to die? Your money saved us for 3 days. It's not often that money saved a person's life," the alchemist said. But the boy was too frightened to listen to the words of wisdom. He had no idea how he was going to transform himself into the wind. He wasn't an alchemist. The alchemist asked one of the soldiers for some tea and poured some on the boy's wrist. A wave of relief washed over him, and the alchemist muttered some words that the boy didn't understand. "Don't give in to your fears," said the alchemist in a strangely gentle voice. "If you do, you won't be able to talk to your heart." "But I have no idea how to turn myself into wind." "If a person is living out his destiny, he knows everything he needs to know. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: that fear of failure." "I'm not afraid of failing. It's just that I don't know how to turn myself into wind." "Well, you will have to learn. Your life depends on it." "But what if I can't?" "Then you will die in the midst of trying to realize your destiny. That's a lot better than dying like millions of other people who never ever knew what their destinies were." "But don't worry," the alchemist continued. "Usually, the threat of death makes people a lot more aware of their lives."